This is dedicated to anyone that's been knocked down but not out. The ones that fell to their knees but rose back up. The ones that scratched and clawed but never let go. The ones willing to admit their faults, move past their failures, and improve every single day. I hope these conversations encourage you to think critically, make you laugh hysterically, inspire you profoundly, and remind you to practice gratitude daily. My name is Iman Huschmand. Welcome to the conversation. Welcome to Awesome People. So I would like to begin by saying thank you so much for Shahzadeh Reza Pahlavi and Crown Princess Yasmine Pahlavi for giving me this pleasure, giving me this honor, and giving me this opportunity to have a conversation with two individuals that I have respected and admired for an incredibly long time, and now get to have this khodemooni conversation. Welcome to this incredible episode of Awesome People.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you so much. We're so happy to be here.
I would like to just begin, considering that this episode is being filmed right around Norouz. I would like to, first of all, say Pisha Pish, Eid Mubarak. And as we are having Norouz 1400 right around the corner, I would love to know what the Pahlavi family is doing this Norouz and how they're celebrating this momentous day of the year.
Yeah. Well, we've got our, it's a little bit of a corona Eid. Last year, it was right during the lockdown, so we really weren't even with our kids. This year, again, we're not going to be with Shahbanu, but hopefully all the daughters and my immediate family, my brother, sister, those just close to us can join and share the day with us. It helps that it's on a Saturday and the weather's been gorgeous. It really feels like the first days of spring are coming. And usually it's more Shahbanu's day. For me, it's more like the day where we enjoy her company, and it's always at her house and full of flowers and the smells of Eid. But sadly, because of Corona, these last two days, last year and this year, we won't be with her. So.
Sure. جاشون رو خالی میکنیم حتما شما جاشون رو خالی میکنین. Shahzadeh, will you be responsible for making the sabzi pol mahi this year, or is that going to be somebody else's responsibility?
Well, I've been on diet for quite a while, so I guess I'll pass on that one this time. Join with the kitchen. It's very hard to cook and not to eat at the same time.
That's true. Do you have a very memorable moment from Norouz, from back when you were Iran, Shahzadeh?
Yes, of course. It was perhaps the only occasion in one day of the year that the entire family would be together, uncles and cousins, and we would celebrate Norouz. But more importantly, I think this time that the more quality time we were able to spend with family in the week following Norouz, which was basically like a holiday, that gave us a very unique time to really spend quality time with each other, with my parents, with my siblings, with their friends, with our friends, and of course enjoying the festivities like the Bedar and all of that stuff. That reminds me of the memories we had back in Iran. In the latter years, we used to travel to Kish Island for the Norouz holidays, and of course, I loved being by the sea. I always loved the sea, and of course, the beautiful island that Kish was, with all the scuba diving and everything else. So many memories indeed.
You probably had your camera in full action, right? I know you're a huge aficionado of filming and photography, so I hope you have at least some nice 8mm or some great images still with you from those days.
I have a lot of projects that are yet to be edited because I frankly didn't have enough time to focus on that aspect, being very busy all these last months with everything that is ongoing, politically speaking, with Iran and everything else. So
right.
As on the artistic side, you cannot just switch off and say, oh, I'm going to be creative for the next 2 hours. As you know, you have to be in the right mood and everything. So that's been a little bit in the waiting. Most of my pictures I posted on my photographic Instagram account that many of my compatriots do follow, and we exchange thoughts and messages. And they send me pictures from Iran, which have been posting this entire month Isfahan, which is really a reminder of how beautiful our country is, and how much our country potentially can be a gold mine for tourism of all forms and kinds. And I think that if we really take care of our environment in more than one way, Iran will be beautiful for the next generation, as well as appealing to anyone who wants to visit our country.
Of course. Well, hopefully one day we will be able to celebrate Norouz again in that beautiful land. I want to now transition to the close relationship that you have together as husband and wife. And I would love to kind of have you take me to the day where one of you said to the other person, "I love you." And the question is, who said it first?
I think I did.
Do you remember?
I proposed to her, which was about, I think, a couple of months after we had first met, and we were in between France and Switzerland. This is 1985, and we were on the lake. I was rowing in a simple small rowboat, and she was sitting in there. And at that point, I said, I think you're the one. And I don't remember exactly what the words I used.
It was something, that you have, that you're serious and you really care for me, and this is not casual for you. And then I got really nervous and scared.
What did you say?
We just met.
What did you say? Do you remember?
I don't think I said much. I was just like kind of freaked out a little bit. I mean, he's my family prior to me meeting him personally. Obviously, had always been very much monarchist. We always had his pictures and his family's pictures in my home. And then when he would do his interviews or talks on either Iranian TV or any other media, we were always running to watch or listen. So I had that whole thing in my head before ever meeting him. And then meeting him, and I was still kind of getting used to all the stuff that came with him. I think we really had to go to the middle of the lake in a canoe to be alone for 10 minutes, because otherwise we were constantly always surrounded by my family or his family or security guards. There never was time to just relax and just be us. So it was kind of scary.
It reminds me of that dating scene between Robin Williams in the movie Good Morning Vietnam, when he's walking with his friend and the whole family is chasing him.
That's such a beautiful moment to kind of reminisce on, especially because normally in these situations of monarchy and royalty, they don't have this love affair, the dating and this romanticism. And so I'm so happy for the two of you that you were able to at least have that sense of normalcy of love and just share this memory. So I appreciate you taking us back to that beautiful day on a canoe. And really what leads after this part, a little fast forward, of course, is the big wedding day. And I've been a part of over 1,000 weddings doing what we do as an entertainment company. So when I thought about, talking to you, I was like, man, I have to include an element of weddings. And if both of you may recall, Hasti and Arsalan's wedding at Fisher's Island, we were here together, and I still remember Shahzadeh, you came a couple times, requested Bandari music and Sandy, and that was a great moment. That was back when I was DJing, actually. So I reminisce on those moments. So speaking of wedding, Yasmine, man, I would love to know, considering that every woman or every girl dreams to have a fairy tale wedding and have that princess outfit. You literally live that dream. And when you look back to your wedding day, what is the most memorable moment of your wedding day that you could share with us?
Well, just to give you some background, it was a pretty tense time. It was during the Iran-Iraq War. So we weren't really that much in a celebratory mood overall as a family. And so, it really was a very small gathering of people. In fact, we really only invited the elders of the family and one or two cousins because we really felt that maybe that it wasn't the right time to have a big party and a celebration.
It was about 60, 65 people maybe.
Yeah, but I personally, for me, it was now I look back upon it, and it was an incredible day because I for the first time, many of his aunts and uncles, it was the first time that I actually got to meet them. And, I just was like so nervous about how to greet them and what they would think of me and all of that. And of course, they were all very lovely. And I'm so happy that I entered the family as young as I did, because I got the chance to meet almost everyone except his father. And so many of those members of the family are now deceased, and I have really fond memories of that night. And it was just, I don't know if it was princess-like, but it was very warm and beautiful, really. We didn't take hardly any pictures because there was worry about anything getting out.
Sure.
But memories are beautiful.
So Shahzaja, well, I mean, with the position that you were in, you inevitably had the choice of anybody that you could choose as a partner for life. And I would love for you to let me know what trait in particular about your wife was it that you knew that she is the one for me and she's the one that I want to grow a family with?
Well, I think a combination of being smart and quite mature for her age and very unpretentious is the first aspect that says, wow, interest, confidence. Anyway, she came across as very natural, normal, down to earth, and unimpressed by anything in particular, which is the story you should tell about when we first met at the airport.
I made a bad impression, not bad, but a funny impression. Not on purpose, but when we met at the airport, I didn't realize I usually wear glasses, used to wear glasses, and I was unaware of all the people that were waiting for me. It was all by chance that he had arrived at the airport same time as me.
We had mutual friends that were picking us up at the same time from Dulles Airport.
So
that's how we first met, at the airport.
Right.
Yeah, I was just getting my luggage and kind of strolling around and not realizing that he was waiting on me. And it just took my time, I think, getting there. And honestly, until I got right up to his face, I didn't realize who was standing there. And then he took that as me being very nonchalant about the whole situation. And I didn't seem nervous at all. Well, I got nervous after I got this close, but I didn't know what was happening from afar. So I think that started us off on a funny little note, and
which made it unique. Exactly, that was the point. It was very unique. I said, okay.
I've noticed in the few occasions that we've hung out in person, there's a true love and respect between the two of you, and also there's like a youthfulness between the two of you, like literally just teenagers in love and just kind of like being fun and themselves around each other. And I actually am a product of my parents having been married for 60 years, knock on wood, and 56 years together as a married couple. And recently I did the Huschmand episode, Unfiltered, and where I asked them, very personal questions about everything. And I asked them what they believe are the keys to a happy marriage, and they gave their answers. Before I share what they said, I would love for you to share with me what you believe based on what has worked for you. What are one or two keys to marriage, a happy marriage, excuse me?
I think first of all, it's sort of, I don't like it when people really build up their relationships as being something so perfect. And, the word happy is, very subjective.
True.
And, so I really, first of all, maybe it's a little bit superstitious too. I just don't know if we necessarily, are the shining example of everything out there that people should be impressed by. But I think one of the reasons we've lasted this long is because I really, really respect him. I just really have never known anyone with so much integrity, anyone who's so honest, who's so himself. He's just, he has no guile. He's just such a, in my opinion, such a has such a beautiful heart and soul, and everything is so sincere and genuine about him. And so that lasts, that feeling probably lasts longer than that euphoria of love and lust and, the crushing on someone and, all that stuff. So I think the number one cause of, I think, our getting along the way we do is I really like him as a person. And I don't want to put my head next to anyone else. I don't want anyone else's head next to my pillow than his. I just trust him implicitly.
I love that. Shahzada, could you also give your take?
Well, it's obviously reciprocal, and the word trust is fundamental here because, there's very, very few instances in life that you could say who it is that I can unquestionably trust and be a pillar and be tekegah, as we say. We support each other and we're there for each other, even if there was nobody else in the world who would hold our hand. And that makes it a very special, unique, irreplaceable relationship that you can't have with any other human being except for your spouse. And of course, as the years goes by, it becomes deeper, that sense of the intimacy, that sense of acceptance of many things, that sometimes you have frictions or disagreements or different tastes, but that's okay. I mean, we to use that famous cliche line, we complete each other. You complete me. and so
That's beautiful.
it's true. I mean, I would be so lonely without her.
I genuinely believe that. That's incredible. And actually that, and by the way, my parents basically said, my mom, love and commonality. That like, as long as you love that person as who they are and you have things in common, then you can fight through everything, even through the ups and downs. Because my parents also dealt with families not getting together along or just the challenges of immigrant life. But it was that love that they had for each other, that respect that they had for each other, and that they just had things that they could always talk about at the end of the night and not having anything short of talking about. So let me kind of just go inside of like the household and ask you a few little newlywed question games. I know you're about to celebrate 35 years of marriage, but just to kind of get to know you a little more as husband and wife and parents, who is the tidier between the two of you? All right, she agrees. Okay, who's the best?
But she has more of an obsession to
OCD-ish. Okay,
yes.
who's the better cook?
He is, for sure. I don't know how to cook at all.
Well, then there we go.
My children are impressed when I grill the hot dog. They think I do a great hot dog, and that's very weird, but probably is the only thing I know how to cook is I cut it and make it crispy. So they think that I'm all that. So the bar is very low for my cooking.
What is the best dish that Shahzada makes that you look forward to?
He has this beautiful tuna that he makes with a wasabi mashed potato and this yummy glaze.
Oh wow!
And he just cooks the fish perfectly. I love it.
Do you have a favorite dish to cook, Shahzada?
I mean, honestly, it depends on where you are, what season it is, what the product that you find that day freshest in the market may be. I mean, it could be a rack of lamb, it could be scallops, it could be a nice piece of fish. God knows. I mean, if you happen to have the right ingredient at the right time and you get inspired by what to cook that particular moment, that's what I go by. I don't open a recipe book and say, okay, today I'm going to do lasagna or I don't know, whatever. If I see something in the market that I like, I buy it, and I say, that's what we're going to have tonight. And oh, by the way, this vegetable as opposed to this one, and that's how it goes. The sort of spontaneous creativity is what I like to do. And I get a lot of ideas going to restaurants and trying to do a little bit of a fusion style, a little bit of the East, a little bit of the West. And
that reminds me, when the girls were younger, the two older ones that don't live with us anymore, we used to have family cooking night. mostly on Wednesday nights, and that usually entailed me sitting at the kitchen counter drinking a glass of wine while he would be cooking with his daughters and making a huge mess.
Living the life.
See, the concern is only the mess.
No, I enjoyed it. I'm just saying, there's like the tornado and it's the kitchen, but I definitely remember those nights where I'd be absolutely useless, and they were they would do a great job.
But first of all, any good cook will tell you that there's absolutely no way you can cook a nice dish without using a lot of utensils.
A lot of utensils.
You cannot do it otherwise. So when you do the labor, it's okay, somebody has got to do does the cooking, but I'm not doing the washing.
Yeah.
I'm not doing the washing.
I can tell you definitely have a very creative side to you when it comes to the kitchen and arts and photography and stuff. Now, you mentioned your daughters helping you out in the kitchen. So for those who don't know, you have 3 daughters. Who is tougher on the girls?
Me. No, I'm the bad.
She's the bad cop and the good.
Yeah. I am. I think it's mostly because I'm much more. I have just more expectations, I guess, and so they usually have an easy time with him.
But 99% of the time, I stand firmly together with my wife, so they cannot divide us. That has been our cardinal principle.
That's true.
What is one advice that you would have for anybody that's raising a teenager? Because I believe Farah is 17 years old right now, correct? So she's still in the teenage years, and I believe it's a very tough time to be growing up in this day and age, especially with social media. Is there a word of advice that you have for raising a teenager?
Well, my philosophy has been that I try to just be very aware of her in terms of what's going on, because they're not very talkative when they're teenagers. I mean, now thankfully she's at the tail end of it and she's getting back to her normal self, sweet self. But there were a couple of years there where she was really not interested in too much talking, and she was mostly in her room and all that. But I think as parents, we just have to sort of be around, because when you're around, you never know when they will feel like sharing something with you. So it's kind of like, the more occasions you have to sort of maybe have a meal together or be in a car with each other or just sit around, it sort of comes out of nowhere. So I feel bad for parents who have a very, very busy schedule, because sometimes that does cause you to lose track of your teenager, because teenagers really aren't very predictable in when and where they want to share something, Mm-hmm.
And especially in this day and age of iPhones and iPads and social media, it has its benefits in terms of information that they can have access to. But at the same time, it makes the socializing very very limited. So seldom do you have that moment, as my wife was just saying, of the urge to communicate something that is more than just a casual comment. And so we have to take advantage of that moment as much as possible. Otherwise, it would just pass. And
his bonding time with Farah and Iman, Noor is not so much into football, was definitely football and the Cowboys.
Oh, wow. Cowboys. I did not know that.
Washington fans.
Yeah, I'm a 49er fan, and I haven't managed to recruit any of my children to my side of the aisle. So, but football is a big fun thing we all do together. Watch it.
That's good. And you make the hot dogs on football Sunday, I assume, right?
Hot dogs are usually just, I don't know, when I'm
very
desperate
random.
and there's no food in the house.
That's true.
I have no backup plan. Yeah, but. No, we do enjoy family time on Sundays, that's for sure.
Beautiful. So to wrap up the family aspect of this conversation, Shahzada, your overall thought of growing up or raising a family with 3 daughters and your wife, how was it growing up with 4 women in the household?
Well, obviously you feel like the absolute minority. But it's not just 4 women, it's women and their friends. It's exponentially increases. You walk into a room and like 15 talking at the same time about 6 different subjects, and somehow they understand every single story. I have a hard time following just one story. They don't want 5 at the same time. And I'm amazed that I need my testosterone shot. Can somebody come to my rescue? It's the only man in the house. But it has its advantages too, because whenever there's an issue, I'm the go-to guy. So I feel like I'm not totally useless to that group of women sitting there.
Yes, you are. You're very valuable. When he's traveling, the whole house falls apart because he fixes everything.
That's hilarious.
The rest of us have never attempted to learn how to fix anything because he's always there to do it for us. So we're a bit spoiled.
That's beautiful. I mean, it seemed like a very interesting dynamic in the household. But when I was asking some friends of what to ask, and I mentioned that I want to definitely ask about the dynamic of having 3 daughters, he said you should ask him how does he manage to have hot water for the shower at the end of like everybody else getting in the shower. So that was pretty funny.
Actually, he did have to take a cold shower the other day.
It happened.
Yeah.
On the topic of females and women, in 2018, you were very open about your battle with cancer. And first of all, I admire your openness for it because I know that you immediately turned it into an opportunity to be able to educate and raise awareness. And I would love for you to touch on that experience. And I know how you believe that there's cancer so taboo, especially amongst Persians and Persian women. So if you could please touch on that experience and what you would hope to accomplish by sharing more of your story.
I definitely felt that there was an opportunity after I got diagnosed to share my experiences, mainly because I quickly realized how little I knew about the disease and the process and the treatment. And also I realized that maybe, women in Iran are even in worse shape than me as far as knowledge and experience shared between each other about the process of cancer treatment and just surviving cancer emotionally and physically. So really that was a spark in my mind to enter the social media jungle. And that's when I started my Instagram. And I just used it as a way to feel closer to women inside my country. I felt like it was a shared experience that it's so common among women and some men. It's a very common disease, but it's also so very treatable. The more knowledge you have about it, and the less shame and fear to discuss things, the less people will die from this, because it is something that it's very time sensitive. It's if you feel something, if you feel a difference in your body, you shouldn't fear the worst. That you should welcome going to the doctor, because the sooner you go, the more likely it is that you will make a full recovery. And the experiences that I've heard from women since I shared my experiences, that many were afraid. They had felt something, but they were just so afraid of the consequences, and they thought it was like a death sentence, or they were ashamed because there was something defective about them, or they were afraid that they would be judged by society, that they had a defect, or their daughters would have a defect, so that people wouldn't marry them. Things that are just very strange to me here, but like I realized those are the thoughts that especially people in the Middle East have. There's a lot of superstition around cancer. So really it started like that. And then I realized, wow, this is so wonderful, because, we all learn from each other. I've learned from women sharing with me, and I hope people have learned from me and my experience. I made a lot of mistakes just out of ignorance, even though I was raised in a country where there's a lot of campaigns for breast cancer awareness. I still didn't fully know what questions to ask my doctors and stuff. So I took the opportunity, and I'm glad I did. I mean, I was never embarrassed about it. So.
Thank you for sharing that. Shahzada, can you kind of share your experience from this when you first found out about it, and from a male and Iranian husband standpoint, what did you feel like your role was to support your wife during this truly challenging time?
Well, first of all, there's no taboo subject or intimidating subjects that my wife and I would not be talking about, including all these aspects. And I must say, to the point that her self-diagnosis was the reason why she probably saved her own life. Just having a mammogram is not enough to pass with a negative detection, thinking that you're totally okay. Because in fact, two weeks after she had her last mammogram, she felt this little lump in her breast, and she told me, "Hey, this is sort of odd and wasn't there before." And I said, "I don't know. It could be maybe some kind of a cyst or something like that, but better check with a doctor. You never know." And it was not until the biopsy was done that they saw that it is cancerous, and it was fortunately in the very early stage 1A as they call it. So it was the kind that obviously would not spread in the sense that you would need chemotherapy or radiation following that, which would have been so difficult for her to have to endure even after opting to have a double mastectomy. But anyway, all of these aspects that we talked about is something that is an example of when men in the family also are aware of what's going on. And a woman, whether it's a sister or a mother or a daughter, talks about it, they need to have the full support of the entire family from both sexes. And that's a culture that has to be recreated in a country where these issues are taboo, especially if you're talking about a part of your body, which is a big no-no. Right. And at least in our cultures, whereas you have to tackle the problem, have an open mind about it. And hopefully this modernity of thinking and behavior is something that will, at the end, only help serve society, not to shy away from it. Similar subjects we talk about. For instance, when we talk about the LGBTQ community in Iran and people who send me messages that are, for instance, transsexual, or they have other issues, and they're so alone and they don't have any support, and all of these issues that need to be understood from every aspect, psychologically, medically, shine a light on it. If we started from ourselves and hopefully we try to spread this kind of attitude as opposed to, frowning at quote unquote defects.
But he also is quite, I think there's some husbands that maybe wouldn't have taken it in such stride. Like I've heard from a lot of women who, after having a double mastectomy, their relationships have deteriorated. The man doesn't know how to handle the situation, doesn't how to handle the disfigurement, can't. Whereas he just dove right into the whole situation. He was the one who was emptying my those drip things that they had put on me after surgery. Drains. He was the one who was cleaning my bandages, making sure I take my medication. And also, I think the nicest thing that he did for me, which I think came totally naturally, I don't think he even realized, was that he never changed the way he looked at me after I changed, after my body looked different. He looked at me as he had always looked at me, with love and affection. And so I was lucky, and I really hope that the men out there realize that all women really want is for you not to think of them as having been changed so fundamentally, to just try to remember them as their soul, not what their breasts look like.
That was beautifully stated. Some things that we just talked about is basically how us Persians, we've, as a family, for generations, have swept things under our Persian rugs, and not discuss things openly. And one other topic that families have not talked about in more detail is mental health in general. And your family has not had any shortage of tragedies as it relates to suicide as well. And depression and anxiety are things that no matter where you're from, every human being goes through it, and yet still Persians are still very behind in being able to communicate and reach out to get the help that they need. And based on your experience, especially Shahzadeh, what advice can you give to Persian families to ensure that they don't ever lose a loved one when they're battling through these storms on their own? So if you have any advice that you can give with regards to mental health, I would greatly appreciate that.
Oh, well, look, I still don't know if you talk to a psychiatrist or a specialist of how depression can be resolved. I think it's one of those deals that no matter how much support you want to put around that person, whether it's voluntary or involuntary admission to an institution to take care of it, if that individual doesn't want to reach for the rope you throw to them, or is in total denial, it doesn't matter what you try to do. And it's a very, very lonely problem. I noticed that both in my siblings who ultimately succumbed to it by committing suicide. But it's not that we were not around them. It's not that we didn't try to address it. It's not that we didn't try to suggest some thoughts to them. It's just that at the end, they have to be able to come up with their own motivation to deal with the problem. I don't know what kind of factors that surrounds an individual contributes to their sense of abandonment or hopelessness, whatever it is that ultimately pushes them over the precipice. Because I can understand in cases where people are completely alone. They have no friends, they have no relatives, they don't have a place to live in, they are in a dire economic situation. But what about people who are well surrounded, don't have any such problems, and still they are depressed, and they still end up committing suicide? I don't really know what a special answer is to that.
I think the thing that probably he doesn't want to talk about is that I think the impact of the revolution, watching their father be hospitalized and hearing the angry mobs outside of his hospital room in New York, having to be dislocated from one place to the next, not feeling safe, feeling like everyone had abandoned you and your family, seeing your parents in such distress, being displaced the way everybody was. I think Reza and Layla were both at a very sensitive age, more so than maybe Reza and Farhanaz. But I think all the children were, based on my conversations and my seeing my in-laws, there was such a deep trauma from all of it. And I think because everybody was traumatized, there was a situation where probably people couldn't help each other. It's, you have to put the oxygen mask on for yourself first before you can put it on the child. And I think the trauma was all around for everyone, and everybody was just trying to survive. And I think the sad truth of it is that despite a lot of attempts to try to bring back Layla and bring back Reza to a place where they could see some positives in their lives, they were in a dark place. And I think it was a long journey from those first days of the revolution.
Looking back, are there any warning signs that you think that were there that unfortunately were overlooked looking back?
I don't think you can replicate the story of what we had to go through. It's rather unique, and it happens so few times in history to be such a traumatic set of circumstances and what happens. So I don't know if you could say it's like catching a cold and how you treat a cold once you get one. All I can say is that for what it's worth, as a particular story of circumstance, when you think of how the medical doctors deal with people who suffer from PTSD, for instance, what are the basic guidelines as to how to cope with it or how to prepare yourself should it reoccur in some form or shape on other occasions in the future. I would say that, again, the more there is discussion on the matter, the more there is a sense of it could happen to anyone at any time. It will help people be at least not shocked if it were to occur. They will be better prepared should it occur, and I hope it doesn't for anyone. But you cannot say never it could happen, but to be more ready. And again, I think the more society talks about these matters, the more you feel like you're not isolated, you're not alone, you're not in prison. Everybody understands it. Everybody can empathize or sympathize or offer support.
Back then, maybe there wasn't as much conversation.
No.
There was really very I think things have improved so much in mental health awareness, at least in this country. But I do think that back in that time when Layla was not feeling right, there was less information available, still kind of a taboo about mental health issues. And I think that hopefully that has changed a lot. So young people do have a better understanding of, how this is something that happens to a lot of people, and that there's support out there that they should ask for help, before they
And,
go
and of course, I must just say, in the case of my sister, it started more with an eating disorder, but then it also led to depression, and one impacted the other. So while you were trying to get better on one side, the other side will kick in, and vice versa. So she could never get out of this sort of perfect storm of two things at the same time, which compounded the problem and made it far more difficult for her to, most importantly, try to save herself, and for those of us trying to be of help. So that's also another thing that could be studied as to a double whammy type scenario of not just one thing that is purely eating disorder or purely a mental issue, but a combination of both, which exacerbates the problem.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's definitely a compound effect of multiple things that kind of come together to create this perfect storm. What do you think, if you don't mind, just one last question about this topic, is what differentiated you and how you, because you obviously experienced the same tragedy, same, incredible experiences of hardship. What kept you strong? What kept you level-headed? Is there something that you did to keep yourself positive and fight through this? Do you have something that kind of kept you going?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is to have a sense of purpose and a focus on something to do. It was not until at least a month after my father passed away that it finally sunk on me and my mother. Oh, she lost her husband and I lost her father. We were immediately propelled into, okay, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to say? What are people going to expect? And then since then, and of course, the whole country, and of course, the war, and so many other aspects just dragged me straight into a scenario that is now almost 40 years and counting of doing everything I can to help save Iran. So I did have a sense of mission and purpose, if you could call it that. So maybe all of that kept me focused on something, not to be dragged into things that maybe my siblings did not immediately sense, that be too busy thinking of something and getting dragged into that negative aspect of falling into depression or what have you. And I must say also that regretfully, and not because it was intentional, in the early years, maybe, and I'm not saying it would have resolved the problem, but as the older brother and as the only, how can I say, the male in the family, with my father not being there and my mother having so many issues on her back, perhaps the fact that we were not together, because we were all scattered. I lived 3 years in Morocco, a year after my father passed away. My siblings were by then living in the United States. We were not as a family under the same roof. In fact, I don't think we ever have been in a scenario where we're all under the same roof. So maybe that vacuum was something that could have given there a little bit more of at least, as we say in Farsi, tekegah, or something to lean on. Maybe it could have made a difference. We did communicate, but it's not enough. It's different than we're talking over the phone as opposed to being in the same room and hugging each other. If somebody doesn't sleep that night and they had a nightmare, or they're crying and they're upset and they want to simply have a shoulder to cry on.
But also you have to, he was also very young. So you were 17, 18 when everything was happening. And I don't think you should consider, I really don't think you had any options. People pushed you in the direction that you were in. And I think the family aspect and sort of what we were started with earlier when we were talking about how do you deal with a teenager, as I said, you have to be there, you have to be aware because things happen and if they may not speak about it, but you should, if you're there, you can see it, you can feel it. Right. And in this circumstance, both my husband and my mother-in-law were unfortunately dragged into a whole other situation where it was just a matter of survival. So everybody suffered.
There's also a distinct change between generations because, when you look at our parents' generation, the culture of not saying things as opposed to be open about things is totally different. Mm-hmm. In our family, we don't shy away from bringing any subject up because we think talking about it is better than ignoring it or pretending it's not there. I think it's a generational thing. I know a lot of Iranians, younger generation, will probably agree with me on that there are things that today they talk among themselves, or if they have children with their children, that they will never have that kind of conversation with their parents. So maybe generationally, there's also a change there. So we try not to do that our parents' generation did. On the contrary, we like to be open, so no stone is left unturned, so to speak.
Well, I mean, it's definitely great that the new generation is starting to open up more. And I think that just hearing these words coming from both of you and seeing how you are very open about talking these things and open to have these honest and vulnerable discussions within your family will hopefully lead to a little spark in other families, especially Persians, to do the same thing, because I wholeheartedly believe that through conversations we can save people from depression, from taking their own lives. Just being there for each other, empathy, sympathy, and just showing them love and support. Those all go a long way. So I greatly appreciate.
These are really key words, because I think one of the issues that I would say, particularly in our Farhang Irani, is still there from parents, is that you can do the best you can as a parent to help your children be equipped with the kind of education and knowledge so they can fend better for themselves down in life. You cannot live their lives for them.
Yeah.
As parents, we have to understand that at some point, our children will have to stand on their own feet. We cannot be there every time there is trouble. They have to be independent. They have to be able to depend on themselves. We cannot live their lives for them. That's so important. And this is part of our way of thinking as a traditional society to a more modern one. I think this is one of the very key aspects that could make a huge difference.
They're just not equipped that way. I mean, my parents definitely were not equipped for that level of discussion and thinking. They were aware if I was doing well or not doing well, but as far as having the vocabulary and it just wasn't available to them.
Remember what I said earlier about living your life according to your own expectations, not of others. Again, another, I think, negative traits in our culture is that we are worried about perception, what other people think. Mardom chi migan.
Right.
Yes. And what's important is what you bring. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's part of the problem. It's always based on other people's expectation. Yeah. And I think that's adding insult to injury, because you're not giving them a sense of confidence. You're giving them a sense that they have to always fear to be judged. And that's not a way to form character.
No, beautifully stated. And I actually saw a little thing a couple of days ago where you shouldn't tell somebody that I'm proud of you. You should tell them, aren't you proud of yourself? So that way they learn to kind of just, accept that they don't need to validation from anybody else, essentially, So that's all great stuff. I mean, I feel like we could go hours talking about these kind of things, and I hope that this conversation, as it pertains to mental health, will hopefully, again, spark some conversations amongst other families. Speaking of families, the last component that I would love to take up your time on is the trip that took to Greece with regards to the refugees, and how there was a beautiful documentary that was created by Iran International. I highly recommend anybody to YouTube it, The Voiceless Refugees. Wonderfully done. Would you mind just kind of speaking to me about how that affected you and what stood out and what you're hoping to do now to help with the situation that many of those Iranians are facing?
I think what the reason that we did the documentary, and we did it very, what you see is really what happened, and there was very little, production aspect to it. We really wanted to shed light on this problem. We really didn't know. I didn't know what I was going to see, and I didn't know what to expect going on this trip. And it turned out, as I've said so many times, that to have been one of the best experiences of my life, even though it was so extremely sad. it was also very, very uplifting in very strange ways. And the humanity and the connections I made there, and the stories that were shared with me, the trust that was put in me, I can't say enough. They're not words for it. But really, the documentary was made mainly because these people are suffering. Iranian refugees, especially, are suffering because they aren't really considered a category that's really at the top of any international organization's list, because they don't consider them refugees of war. They consider them economic refugees. Mm-hmm. And so they don't have as much access to things as, let's say, of course, Syrian refugees or Afghani refugees, or, But in fact, when you listen to the stories of these Iranian refugees, you realize what they went through is the same, if not worse, than war. They were running for their lives. Many of them, they were under abusive situations. They were jailed for things that were trumped up charges, or young people's families were threatened for things that they had done. And a lot of the women that I spoke to were victims of rape and other abuse, physical abuse, and with no protection from society and the law as it is currently in Iran. So really, that was the aim of the documentary. What was great that happened was, as a result, there was an outpouring of interest, and we were able to help them create a community center in Athens for refugees, especially Iranian refugees, where they could have access to a lot of different things.
The Cafe Patogh?
Yeah, Cafe Patogh, created by a refugee, Arash, a very, very lovely person who has his papers and could be off doing his own thing, but has chosen to stay in Athens mostly, and to basically continue to help his fellow refugees. And so really, it's been wonderful to be able to do that, and I hope to be able to continue supporting the expenses and things for that community center and help other refugees in Lesbos. But that can only happen if people continue to care. And we do have a GoFundMe, and I hope that every time I do one of these interviews, really the only reason I do it is because it's a chance to talk about the refugees, and maybe a few people will be generous and help us continue to help them.
Where's the best place that they can go to find out more, so that you can grow your team of people that can make an impact?
Yeah, we have a in the bio of my Instagram, yasminepahlavi. In the bio, there's a link to the refugees GoFundMe page, and it's through an organization called Persian American Women's Conference. Right. They have helped us because we wanted to make sure we do everything according to U.S. laws and U.S. accounting and regulations. So everything has been documented. Every expense, every dollar that people have donated has gone directly to the refugees, albeit in increments, because we're paying rent and we're helping them with some of the programs they have, some meal programs they have for refugees. It's been very difficult with Corona, so they've been making little bags of food and leaving it outside for pickup. So, and the kids, there's programs for the young kids who are there. Some 30% of these 13,000 refugees are kids, so they suffer a lot. So that's really all. If they go to my Instagram and to the bio, they will see it, and every dollar really counts.
The last two parts of this wonderful conversation we're having is, one, on a personal note, Shahzadeh, as somebody who's been in the entertainment industry for 23, 24 years, and somebody who could see the joy that you have when you play the drums, and how in the presence of Shaheen and Natalie's home, and during those incredible jam sessions that I had the privilege of being around with Farmaz Asani and Marjan, and when I see you performing and seeing how you're like in your happy place over there, I wanted to ask you that if you had the choice to be the lead drummer of any band in history and perform on any stage that has ever been built, and to have that concert benefit something that is the most meaningful to you, what band would it be? What stage would it be? And what would be the mission or the purpose behind that concert?
It's very tough for me to have to pick one of the two of my favorite bands for that sense, because I love Santana and I love Pink Floyd.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, one of them can open.
In a sheer performance standpoint, I would probably have to say Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I knew it. And also your cause would be the oceans, right? You're such an environmentalist. Maybe that.
Well, actually, thinking of the refugees, perhaps we could come together with a bunch of our fellow Iranian musicians and have a concert dedicated to raising funds for refugees. I'll be happy to jam along as a drummer.
That would be great. Look,
I mean, my friend, I think that we now have something to do after we get off this. This genuinely, and I'm having Shaheen actually perform at the live stream as well. And so I'll get back to you. I got this. Let me have the honor of helping produce this, and however way that you have it envisioned, it will be the greatest honor of my life. I can tell you that much.
You saw Arash Labaf. He came with me.
Yes.
And I think music really brings so much joy to everybody.
Yes.
And you could see in the documentary how much how happy the kids were dancing along to him. He really, really
absolutely
gave them a great gift.
Absolutely.
Since we're on the subject of music and joy, I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to focus on what exactly is the antithesis to a regime of darkness that has celebrated martyrdom and forcing people to cry over dead soldiers during the war or what have you, constantly flagellating themselves into negativity. We are a culture that celebrates life. Norouz is about new life. And it is very apropos to remind ourselves that the best antidote to a regime that constantly wants you, first of all, not to think for yourself, and then wants you to lament every day, to fight them with joy, with celebration, with music, with happiness, with a smile on our face, despite all the difficulties, because that's the only thing that will keep us alive, only thing that will keep us being positive and think about positivities and put aside negativities. Let light triumph over darkness.
I mean, you have no idea, like the things that you're saying right now is speaking so deeply to me, because the only thing that keeps me driving every single day is that, if you recall, there was Live Aid back in 1983 at Wimbledon for HIV, and
Bob Geldof did with the whole cast of characters.
Yeah.
I watched in a row. Absolutely.
And Queen's performance is, in my opinion, the greatest live performance of all time, with Freddie Mercury there. And I've been saying to myself for years that if I could have something that I can leave this earth on, is to produce this incredible experience musically that will bring people together for a cause that everybody just wants to be a part of. And last night, actually, which I believe you're friends with him too, Andy Madadian, our great pop star from California. I was having a very nice conversation with him yesterday, because he's graciously also being a part of the live stream. And, he was Dar Diling, and his Dar Dil was the fact that, the inside of Iran is investing so much money into music and the films, really to sargarm the people, yet all of our best talents outside of Iran, whether they're singers, they're musicians, they're songwriters, the technicians, everybody that Bajuna Dil is trying to create music, they don't have the opportunity because there is no financial resource. And I have no doubt that if we all come together for this kind of cause, everybody can win. We can spread so much beauty and happiness and joy. And so my wheels are already turning in being able to create something special. And so I appreciate you even planting that seed. I'm going to grow it, and I'm going to make sure that it's the most beautiful garden with you jamming to it. All right, cool. And so on a closing note, if you would like to go ahead and have the virtual stage to give a Norouz greeting to your compatriots around the world, I will be quiet and let you say whatever message you'd like for Norouz 1400.
Well, you're the person that knows how to give messages well. I personally just hope that there's more freedom in the new year, that there's less suffering, that Corona will be something of the past, hopefully soon. But I just wish everybody a beautiful new year, and at least one day where they can put their sadnesses and their challenges and the difficulties they face in Iran aside and really enjoy spring and the rebirth together with their families.
I think my message is the most simple message possible, which is unity, one voice, because divided we will fall. We can stand together. And this is a time where the country needs to know that every single Iranian that wants to fight for his freedom and liberty are standing together and they are not alone. And we need to voice that out. We have to show that beyond just what we think and put it into action. And I think this is perhaps the opportunity entering a new century in our calendar of looking about making a difference. Each and every one of us together, we will make the difference. I have no doubt about that. When there's a will, there's a way, and that will has to now be created. It's upon each and every one of us to, first of all, find that determination in ourselves. And when you have determination, you find motivation, and with motivation comes everything else. So I hope that this is a Norouz of motivation and hope to finally triumph over darkness and put aside all evils and start our century in a country back on track with liberty and happiness and belonging for everyone with no discrimination whatsoever of any kind.
Thank you to both for those incredible words. And you mentioned, divided we fall. This is actually why about 2 years ago when I started the production company, I called it Unite and Conquer, because I know that together we can do so much more, and we want to conquer all the great things in life, which is the love, which is the unity, which is the growth, which is family, all these amazing things. And we can only do that when we work hand in hand. So I greatly appreciate the words of encouragement, the positivity, and hopefully this is truly a year for all pure Persians, Iranians around the world to be happy, be healthy, and live a more joyful and peaceful life.
Well, as we say in Farsi, Norouzatan Piruz, but Piruz means victory after all.
Yeah.
I was always figuring, what's the Piruz all about? Better make it serious this time. Let's bring victory.
Let's do it. This is the year.
Yeah.
Let's make it a victorious century ahead for all Persians, all generations. I cannot thank you enough for this incredible opportunity. I hope that I didn't bore you with basic questions. It was very, very entertaining for me at least, and hopefully our viewers would enjoy it and let it catapult them to an incredible year with love and light. And if you give me the honor, I would love to invite my mother, Huschmand, my father, Reza Huschmand, and my sister, Sogol Afshar Javan, who just wanted to say hi, and they also have little memories with your family. And so these are the ones that if you give me permission, I would love to have them come say hi real quick. We just have to move this camera. And I just realized that they can't hear them, so I have to kind of translate, but they can hear them. So I'm going to have my mom on my left real quick.
They can't hear us.
They can hear, but I have to translate. Unfortunately, the earpiece is in my ear. Unless Brandy can figure it out. But they can definitely hear you. And here comes my father. اگه لطفا این پیرهن رو بردارین. پرویز روشن سوگل شما بیاین. I'm gonna squeeze. See, خوشبختانه she's fit, so she can do this. All right, so we got the whole family over here. So اول پرویز هوشمند اگه شما اینجا نگاه کنین میدونم که شما یه داستانی داشتین.
بله. سلام عرض میکنم. تبریک خدمت شما و سال نو رو به شما تبریک میگم. من جز خاندان سلطنتی بودم همیشه و پدر من معمار دربار بود و از کارهایی که انجام داده بوده از کاخ مرمر بوده تا آخرین کارش آرامگاه رضاشاه کبیر که در بعضی اوقات من با خودش میبردش در سر کارهای خودش و واقعا برای من یک خاطرات بسیار بسیار عالی بوده. امیدوارم که همیشه سلامت و خوش و خرم باشید و سال بسیار بسیار خوبی رو شروع بکنید و امیدواریم که در خدمتتون بتونیم باشیم.
خیلی ممنون. همچنین شما و تمام عزیزان.
چه سعادتیه که در آستان نوروز ما چشممون به شما نازنینا باز شده و بعد از سال سختی که گذروندیم این امید بخشه. واقعا من میدونم که سال خوبی برای همه ایرانی‌ها خواهد بود. منم 14 سال در خدمت بودم، خاطرات خوب دارم. به هر حال آرزوی خوشبختی و پایداری عشق شما دو نفر که از همه مهمتره. هرچی من تمام ما خوشحالیم که شماها رو نگاه میکنیم و میبینیم با عشقتون به تمام ایرانی‌ها نیرو میدیم. I love you so much.
سوگل عزیز
امروز روز خیلی خیلی پرخاطره‌ای برای من و خانواده‌ام هستش و سپاسگزارم از اینکه در برنامه ایمان جان شرکت کردید. براتون آرزوی بهترینا رو دارم با سلامتی کامل و نوروزتون پیروز. واقعا امسال نوروز ما رو شما نورانی تر کردین. یک دنیا متشکر.
سپاس از شما، خیلی ممنون.
دخترای نازنینتون از طرف ما ببوسی.
Yeah, so thank you so much on behalf of my family, Mahin, Parviz, Sogol, and all the Persians around the world. Thank you for being an exemplary example of wonderful Iranians trying to make sure that you pass on the best of who we are and what we are to generations to come. و با امید دارم شما هستیم. Have a wonderful, wonderful New Year, and we'll be in touch to produce the most incredible live performance for all the good that you want to make happen with, of course, Shahzadeh behind the drums.
Thank you. Thank you.
Khoda Hafiz.